In the previous episode, we discussed the oxygen-carbon dioxide equilibrium in the bloodstream and how the presence of carbon dioxide aids the release of oxygen from hemoglobin. Today I will walk you through the impact of inhaling, exhaling on our overall well-being. Let us begin with understanding the central nervous system, the moot point being the importance of breath. Our central nervous system consists of the somatic nervous system and the autonomous nervous system. The somatic nervous system is responsible for conscious sensory perception and voluntary control of skeletal muscles, helping us interact with the external environment and respond to sensory stimuli consciously. It consists of sensory neurons that transmit information from sensory receptors in the body to the central nervous system and motor neurons that transmit signals from the central nervous system to skeletal muscles, allowing for voluntary movement. The sensory neurons detect sensations such as touch, temperature, pain, pressure, and proprioception, sense of body position. These sensory signals are then transmitted to the central nervous system, particularly the brain, where they are processed and interpreted to generate conscious perceptions and awareness of the external world. Conversely, the motor neurons of the somatic nervous system receive signals from the brain and transmit them to the skeletal muscles. These signals initiate voluntary movements, enabling us to perform activities such as walking, talking, writing, and other deliberate physical actions. The autonomic nervous system is a division of the peripheral nervous system that controls involuntary bodily functions, maintaining internal homeostasis and regulating organ systems. It works unconsciously and automatically, allowing the body to respond to internal and external stimuli without conscious effort, that is, without our knowledge. The autonomic nervous system controls bodily processes such as heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, respiration, temperature regulation, and glandular secretion. It influences various organs and tissues throughout the body, coordinating their functions to maintain optimal physiological balance. While the autonomic nervous system (ANS) and the somatic nervous system (SONS) are distinct divisions of the peripheral nervous system, they are connected and interact in certain situations. One of the connections between the two systems is through the central nervous system, CNS, specifically the brain. The brain plays a central role in integrating and coordinating signals between the ANS and the SONS. It receives sensory information from both systems and generates appropriate responses, influencing the activity of both motor pathways. For example, in response to a stressful or threatening situation, the sympathetic division of the ANS is activated, initiating the fight or flight response. This response involves physiological changes such as increased heart rate, dilation of blood vessels, and heightened alertness. Simultaneously, the brain can send signals to the skeletal muscles through the SONS, preparing them for potential action. Additionally, certain reflex arcs can involve both the ANS and the SONS. Reflexes are rapid, involuntary responses to specific stimuli. Some reflexes, such as the withdrawal reflex, may involve both autonomic and somatic components. For instance, if you accidentally touch a hot surface, the sensory information from your skin is transmitted to the CNS. The CNS then generates a reflex response that involves the activation of both the ANS, causing sweat production and increased blood flow to cool the skin, and the SONS, causing the withdrawal of your hand. The ANS is further divided into two main branches, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. These two branches work in opposition to each other, maintaining a delicate balance that allows the body to respond appropriately to different situations. The sympathetic system, also known as the sympathetic nervous system or the fight or flight response, is one of the two main divisions of the autonomic nervous system in the human body. The term sympathetic originates from the Greek word sym, meaning together or with, and pathos, meaning feeling or suffering. It reflects the system's role in coordinating physiological responses in times of stress, danger, or arousal. The sympathetic system is responsible for preparing the body for action and mobilizing its resources to deal with perceived threats or challenges. When activated, it initiates a series of physiological changes that help individuals respond effectively to stressful or threatening situations. These responses include increased heart rate, heightened blood pressure, dilation of blood vessels and muscles, increased blood flow to the brain, the release of stress hormones, such as adrenaline and noradrenaline, dilation of the pupils, and inhibition of non-essential functions such as digestion. It is worth noting that while the sympathetic system is often associated with the fight or flight response, it is not solely limited to these extreme scenarios. It also plays a key role in regulating other bodily functions during normal daily activities, such as maintaining blood pressure, regulating body temperature, and controlling organ function. Its primary function, however, remains the rapid and coordinated activation of physiological responses to prepare the body for action in response to stress or threats. The parasympathetic system, also known as the parasympathetic nervous system, is the counterpart to the sympathetic system within the autonomic nervous system. It acts in opposition to the sympathetic system, promoting relaxation, restoration, and conservation of energy. The parasympathetic system is responsible for maintaining homeostasis, conserving energy, and promoting the body's normal functioning during restful or non-stressful periods. When activated, it supports activities such as digestion, elimination, and restorative processes. The parasympathetic system has widespread effects on various organs and tissues throughout the body. When stimulated, the parasympathetic system slows down heart rate, constricts blood vessels, promotes digestion and nutrient absorption, stimulates salivation and tear production, and enhances urinary and bowel function. It is often referred to as the rest and digest, or feed and breed system, as it supports activities associated with rest, digestion, and reproduction. The parasympathetic system helps regulate various bodily functions to maintain a state of equilibrium and conserve energy when the body is not under threat or stress. It ensures that essential functions, such as digestion and elimination, occur efficiently and that the body can recover. The balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic activity is crucial for overall physiological well-being. An imbalance in this autonomic control can lead to various health issues. For instance, chronic stress can result in excessive sympathetic activity, contributing to conditions like hypertension, anxiety, and gastrointestinal disorders. Conversely, impaired parasympathetic function may lead to digestive problems, decreased heart rate variability, and difficulty in relaxation. The autonomic nervous system works largely unconsciously and involuntarily, influenced by factors such as emotions, stress, physical activity, and external stimuli. However, conscious practices like deep breathing exercises, meditation, and relaxation techniques can help modulate autonomic responses and promote balance within the system. While the autonomic nervous system (ANS) and the somatic nervous system (SONS) are distinct divisions of the peripheral nervous system, they are connected and can interact with each other in certain situations. One of the connections between the two systems is through the central nervous system, CNS, specifically the brain. The brain plays a central role in integrating and coordinating signals between the ANS and the SONS. It receives sensory information from both systems and generates appropriate responses, influencing the activity of both motor pathways. For example, in response to a stressful or threatening situation, the sympathetic division of the ANS is activated, initiating the fight or flight response. This response involves physiological changes such as increased heart rate, dilation of blood vessels, and heightened alertness. Simultaneously, the brain can send signals to the skeletal muscles through the SONS, preparing them for potential action. Additionally, certain reflex arcs can involve both the ANS and the SONS. Reflexes are rapid, involuntary responses to specific stimuli. Some reflexes, such as the withdrawal reflex, may involve both autonomic and somatic components. For instance, if you accidentally touch a hot surface, the sensory information from your skin is transmitted to the CNS. The CNS then generates a reflex response that involves the activation of both the ANS, causing sweat production and increased blood flow to cool the skin, and the SONS, causing the withdrawal of your hand. It's important to note that while there are connections and interactions between the ANS and the SONS, they generally function independently and control different types of responses. The ANS predominantly regulates involuntary processes and maintains homeostasis, while the SONS is responsible for conscious sensory perception and voluntary control of skeletal muscles. Overall, the connection between the autonomic and somatic nervous systems allows for coordinated responses to internal and external stimuli, with the brain acting as a key integrator and controller of these responses. The vagus nerve, also known as cranial nerve X, is a crucial component of the autonomic nervous system. It is the longest and most complex of the cranial nerves, extending from the brainstem to the abdomen and innervating multiple organs and structures throughout the body. The vagus nerve is primarily associated with the parasympathetic nervous system, which regulates bodily functions during relaxation and normal physiological activities. The sensory fibers of the vagus nerve relay information from organs to the brain, providing feedback on their status and facilitating autonomic control. It carries sensory signals related to heart rate, blood pressure, and lung function, allowing the brain to monitor and adjust these processes as needed. The motor fibers of the vagus nerve transmit signals from the brain to various organs, exerting parasympathetic control. Activation of the vagus nerve slows down heart rate, promotes digestive processes, stimulates salivation and tear production, and enhances other restorative functions in the body. It helps modulate the activity of smooth muscles, glands, and other structures, facilitating digestion, elimination, and overall homeostasis. Additionally, the vagus nerve has connections to areas of the brain involved in mood regulation and emotional responses, and it has been linked to emotional well-being. Medical research and clinical applications have focused on techniques such as vagus nerve stimulation, VNS, as treatments for conditions like epilepsy, depression, and potentially other disorders. The vagus nerve, originating in the medulla oblongata, is a major component of the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. It consists of sensory and motor fibers and plays a role in regulating heart rate, digestion, immune responses, and maintaining overall physiological balance. While the vagus nerve primarily connects to the autonomic nervous system, there are indirect interactions between the autonomic and somatic nervous systems. Reflex responses involving both autonomic and somatic components can occur, where sensory input from the somatic nervous system triggers autonomic responses mediated by the vagus nerve. It's important to note that the autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system generally function independently. The vagus nerve predominantly influences autonomic functions and does not directly connect the somatic and autonomic nervous systems. However, there are shared neural pathways and reflex arcs that allow for indirect interactions between the two systems.
Now we will delve into an intriguing aspect of our nervous system: the influence of the somatic nervous system on the autonomic nervous system through the control of our breathing patterns. By the end of this lecture, you will have a deeper understanding of how conscious regulation of breathing can impact our physiological and emotional state. Let's once again briefly discuss the somatic and autonomic nervous systems. The somatic nervous system, SONS, is responsible for voluntary movements and sensory perception, while the autonomic nervous system, ANS, governs involuntary functions like heart rate, digestion, and respiration. These two systems generally operate independently, but they do share certain interactions. Now, let's explore how the SONS can train and modulate the ANS through the regulation of breathing patterns. Breathing exercises, such as deep breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, can have a remarkable impact on the ANS. When we consciously alter the rate, depth, and rhythm of our breathing, we can influence our physiological and emotional state. One of the primary mechanisms by which the SONS affects the ANS is through the activation of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is connected to both the autonomic and somatic nervous systems. It plays a crucial role in triggering the relaxation response associated with the parasympathetic nervous system. This counteracts the stress response of the sympathetic nervous system, leading to a sense of calm and relaxation. Deep breathing exercises are particularly effective in activating the vagus nerve. These exercises involve taking slow, deep breaths, expanding the diaphragm, and extending the exhalation phase. By stimulating the vagus nerve, deep breathing can result in a reduction in heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormone levels. This modulation of the ANS through voluntary control of breathing demonstrates the influence of the SONS on autonomic functions. It's important to note that while voluntary control of the ANS through the SONS is possible, it may require practice and training to develop proficiency. Just like any skill, it takes time. Now we will explore the fascinating relationship between breathing and the nervous systems, as well as the effects they have on our bodies. Let's take a closer look at the respiratory system, which consists of essential structures involved in breathing, such as the lungs, diaphragm, intercostal muscles, and airways. Breathing is controlled by the respiratory centers located in the brainstem, specifically the medulla oblongata and the pons. These centers receive inputs from various sources, including chemoreceptors, lung receptors, and higher brain centers. The neural pathway responsible for breathing starts with the respiratory centers in the brainstem, generating rhythmic signals that initiate the contraction of respiratory muscles. These signals travel down the spine and reach the respiratory muscles, primarily the diaphragm and intercostal muscles, through motor neurons of the somatic nervous system. Thus, the somatic nervous system plays a crucial role in regulating the contraction and relaxation of these muscles during breathing. Now let's delve into the connection between breathing and the autonomic nervous system. The vagus nerve, which extends from the brainstem, innervates various organs, including the lungs and airways. When we consciously regulate our breathing patterns, such as through deep breathing exercises, we engage the somatic nervous system to modulate the respiratory muscles involved in the breathing process. By intentionally taking slow, deep breaths and expanding the diaphragm, we activate the motor neurons of the somatic nervous system, thereby controlling the contraction. And finally, we will discuss how breathing affects us. During inhalation, the sympathetic nervous system becomes activated and affects the heart. This activation has several effects on heart function. For instance, it increases heart rate, chronotropic effect, through the release of norepinephrine, which binds to beta-adrenergic receptors in the heart. This binding enhances the rate at which electrical impulses are generated by the heart's pacemaker cells in the SA node, leading to an accelerated heart rate. Additionally, the sympathetic nervous system increases contractility, inotropic effect, by enhancing the force with which the heart contracts. It achieves this by binding norepinephrine to beta-adrenergic receptors in cardiac muscle cells. Furthermore, sympathetic activation can cause vasoconstriction of the coronary arteries during inhalation, temporarily reducing blood flow to the heart. However, the increased heart rate and contractility compensate for this reduced blood supply, ensuring adequate oxygen and nutrient delivery to the heart. The sympathetic nervous system also regulates blood pressure by increasing heart rate and contractility, thereby maintaining an adequate cardiac output. During exhalation, the parasympathetic nervous system becomes activated. It releases acetylcholine, which binds to muscarinic receptors in the heart, resulting in various changes in cardiac activity. These include a decrease in heart rate, chronotropic effect, by slowing down the generation of electrical impulses in the SA node. The parasympathetic activation also reduces the speed of electrical conduction through the heart, dromotropic effect, by binding acetylcholine to muscarinic receptors in the AV node and other conducting tissues. This ensures proper coordination of the heart's chambers and efficient pumping. Moreover, the parasympathetic activation during exhalation decreases the contractility of the heart muscle, inotropic effect, by binding acetylcholine to muscarinic receptors in cardiac muscle cells. This relaxation reduces the workload of the heart. Additionally, the parasympathetic nervous system promotes vasodilation, including in the coronary arteries that supply blood to the heart, enhancing blood flow, oxygen delivery, and nutrient supply to the cardiac muscle. By decreasing heart rate, contractility, and blood pressure, the parasympathetic nervous system helps restore the heart to a state of rest and restoration. The interplay between the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions of the autonomic nervous system maintains a dynamic balance in heart function. The sympathetic activation during inhalation prepares the body for increased oxygen demand, while the subsequent parasympathetic activation during exhalation restores the heart to a relaxed state. This interplay ensures appropriate adjustments to maintain cardiovascular homeostasis. In our next episode, we will explore various breathing techniques and their influence on the autonomic nervous system, providing insights into how we can utilize them to enhance our well-being. I hope you've enjoyed this lecture and gained a deeper appreciation for the intricate connection between breathing and the nervous system.